Okay, so hello everyone. A very good morning to you all. This is Pragya, your host for the Masterclass. It's so great to see you all here on this Saturday morning and super thrilled to welcome you all to today's Masterclass on developing product sense organized by Institute of Product Leadership. Feel free to drop a hi or a hello in the comment section for the speaker or me in the chat window. Folks, in the current scenario, digital has become more important than ever. Brand loyalty has been shaken and spending levels are now pre-crisis levels. Therefore, in order to understand what problems your product solves, why your product would or would not work, and how to build more. In the next 2 hours, we'll discuss and understand a framework to approach product sense for customer, products cutting through optimization, and finding opportunities to better service goals. Grab a cup of coffee, a notepad, and let's start with today's session. So, before we start today's insightful session, let me give you a quick intro to the Institute. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, design, and strategy. The institute has partnered with three universities in India and the University of Houston in the United States. The institute was founded in 2012 with a singular mission of creating 10,000 plus product leaders. Ever since the organization has designed and delivered programs in collaboration with various institutes, universities, and corporates to senior working professionals to help them make career transition into product leadership. You can find out more about the institute and the programs offered on our website. Please check the chat window for the URL. And for those who have joined us via LinkedIn, please check the comment section for the URLs. Folks, the Executive MBA in Product Leadership is a 18-month on-campus learning by doing it right by experiential learning led by industry's top decision makers as faculties and executive coaches. A curriculum designed by leading industry practitioners for senior or mid-level professionals like you who are wanting to build end-to-end global product perspectives specializing into product management, product design, product and digital strategy, product and growth marketing, and new venture creation. Once the speaker presents his insights, we will open up for questions. Please keep your questions ready. You can post your questions on the Zoom Q&A section. And the session is being streamed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So viewers on any of these channels, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section. And please don't miss the opportunity. Engage with a speaker with some good, intriguing questions. So, without further delay, coming to the brilliant masterclass on developing product sense, let me give you a quick intro to the distinguished and eminent speaker, Malay Krishna. After graduating from IIT Delhi, Malay started his product management career and worked as in two startups, gaining exposure to high growth companies and developing product leadership and strategy skills. In his role as lead product manager at Vyapar, he is responsible for driving product roadmap strategy for the company to give back the product community. Malay mentors aspiring product managers as well, helping them to develop a career in product management by working closely with the cohort. Now, I would like to hand over the session to you, Malay, so you can go ahead with the session. Yes, it's visible.
Great. So, hi everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share what I have learned and what I have understood about product management, product sense. And obviously, before I start, a little bit of an introduction about myself. So, I came out of IIT Delhi and then moved straight into a startup. I was originally hired for an operations role, moved into product management incidentally because of a product that I had built for hiring the supply for that operations. I worked there. There was a startup called Hashlon. I worked there for almost 3 years, and then I moved out to Vyapar. Hashlon later got acquired by Byju's, and Vyapar is now where I'm leading the product team, trying to help users manage their own businesses. So it's been a very enriching journey in general as a product manager. Right now, the complex problems that we are trying to solve is how can you help users manage their business better? What kind of features do they need? What kind of compliances that are usually complicated can we simplify? Is sort of the core problem area that we have. Anyway, Moving on, what we will discuss in this session today is how can you develop product sense. So obviously there are many skills that product managers have, and one of the hardest is basically product sense, right? As the word suggests, product sense is in an inherent sense of how products work. There are so many PM skills: communication, strategy, collaboration, data, business, technical know-how. All of these, there are so many skills. One of the hardest, in my opinion, is developing product sense. But the great thing is that it's something that you can learn. Contrary to popular belief, it's actually not something that people are born with. Some people are inherently better at it, but it's okay. I mean, that is true about almost every skill in the world. Some people are just inherently better at it, while some people have to work hard, or right, have to develop it over time, right? So what I would suggest as a takeaway from this session is, what we're going to discuss is a couple of key tenets on how you can figure out product sense, basically starting from what what does it even mean, and then giving a few examples and giving a uh, few pointers to keep in mind to to understand how product sense can be built. So of course this is an amalgamation of articles, books, and my own experiences. So it's just an overall amalgamation into a presentation which I feel would be helpful for any new PM or any aspiring PM, or in fact anyone who's struggling with product sense, right? So why does the tagline here says build the muscle? Like any sport, like any physical muscle, if you practice, you build it. Product sense is very similar to that. There are a few components of product sense, and all of them combine together to figure out, or to create a product manager with a great product sense, which basically means someone who is more right than he's wrong. At the base of it, that's what product sense means. And yes, it is a muscle. It's a mental muscle. If you keep doing the loop, the product sense loop, again and again, you keep getting better at it. So of course, product sense is vague. One of the graphs I found on the internet, this was a survey that someone had conducted, where they had asked what is the toughest skill from the entire set of skills that people want to that people want to master from product management, and product sense was, as you can see, one of the hardest, right? So it is one of the hardest skill to manage, to understand. What makes it even tougher is it's a subject that's very new. So PM in itself is a very new subject. It's not like like physics or chemistry, or even some of the more managerial subjects like operations management, which has a lot of set rules or set frameworks that you can use. It's still evolving. A lot of the frameworks that we learn, that we apply, are still frameworks that are evolving. And even in that, product sense is probably the vaguest of the skill. For example, if you talk about communication, there is a general sense of what communication means for people. If you talk about execution, there is a general sense of, okay, what execution means. Strategy similarly, data similarly, but product sense is very vague, right? It's one of the most important skills, no doubt about that, but it's one of the hardest to master because it's so vague, and there is not much content written about what product sense really is, right? Which obviously means that sometimes you may be really good at product sense, but you just don't know it, or sometimes you don't know if you have improved or not. So those are the kind of points we'll cover in this presentation. um, and a lot of you, if you've been appearing for interviews, or if you've been discussing this is something that you would have found as the first sort of interaction, or one of the earlier interactions that you would have. So it's important from that part as well, and it's important for anyone to gauge your product acumen, right? um, there is no streamlined course, or there is no streamlined structure, apart from a few institutes like IPL itself, who have given the thought of breaking down the entire stream, and hence, as I said, the content available is less. But anyway, let's try to dive deeper into what does it mean. right? So I think one of the great Venn diagrams I found on product sense is, it's basically a mix of empathy and creativity, right? Empathy is very straightforward. Empathy is when you're able to put yourself in the shoes of someone and understand what they feel about a situation. And creativity uh, is your own contribution to solving a problem, or to just understanding someone's situation. So having product sense, I mean, what is product sense is pretty vague, but what happens when you get product sense is you're able to consistently churn out products that have the intended impact that you had. For example, if you set out to take a goal of increasing activation for your product, you are able to consistently deliver features or consistently deliver initiatives that actually move the number, or that actually move what you had originally set out to, right? To develop these kind of solutions, you need to be in the middle of being very empathetic to the user and creative in the way you approach problems, or in the way you approach solutions. So uh, we will focus on both empathy and creativity. Of course, there are frameworks that I don't think I would be able to cover because of spending only a restricted amount of time here. But the idea was obviously to go as deep as possible into empathy and creativity. Frameworks are something that you can learn over time, or you can learn by applying these two key principles again and again. So what we're trying to cover here is product science at a very meta level. We are not trying to cover how execution of product science happens. So we're trying to cover what it exactly means and how can you develop it, right? So once again, once you get product sense, what you will have is you will be able to instinctively understand users, and you would be able to instinctively uh, deliver solutions that are out of the box, that are not very obvious to other people, right? Moving on, a couple of great examples of product sense, and there's one more which I've not mentioned here, but I think the iPhone, right? So at that time, the true belief was that phones are built for functionality. They are built for calling, they're built for messaging, and that's it. That was the functionality of the phone. iPhone was designed on the premise that people value aesthetics as much as they value functionality. So yeah, you can give me calling, you can give me messaging, that's great, or maybe you can give me to play a couple of games, that's good enough, is what people thought. But the product sense in the creators of the iPhone was that no, people actually value aesthetics as much as they value functionality, which is true for us in every sort of way. For example, in a real life scenario, if you're going to buy a house, you're not just going to be looking at it as a functional thing. You will look at it from an aesthetics point of view as well. Aesthetics is generally pleasing. I mean, that is why people maintain their assets so well. They maintain their cars, their houses, uh, they maintain certain systems that they follow, certain work directories that they follow. It is all because of the value of aesthetics in life in general, apart from the value of functionalities, right? So that was the premise on the basis of which the iPhone was created. For example, Facebook, when it was expanding, a couple of key key points of repulsion from the audience was obviously one, let's keep it closed because it was created for a closed group. Let's keep it closed, let's keep it premium, let's not invite everyone, right? But the product sense was everyone needs to share information, or everyone is okay to share information, or everyone likes to brag about it or think about it, right? Similarly, newsfeed was initially perceived to be very intrusive, like, okay, whatever am I doing, you're showing it to someone else without me knowing who all are seeing what am I doing, right? And but the the thinking there, or the product sense there, was people are okay to discuss, to understand, or to see, or to consume content, or to consume what is going on in the lives of their friends or people who are with them. Similarly, Snapchat is or Snap Streaks, which is a feature on Snapchat, is built on the premise that People like to know how long have they been in touch with, because that's how you usually talk in real life. I mean, I've been friends with him for 7 years. I've been friends with him for 5 months or whatever. That is the premise on which Snapstreak was built. It was on the inside that people enjoy knowing the length of their friendship, right? So these are like few examples where great product sense led to great products. TikTok is another example, or Reels now here, but originally TikTok is another example of great product sense of knowing that, okay, the 10-second, 15-second immediate dopamine release is what fuels repeat consumption rather than a longer video. That is again something that's come out of, or uh, that's from obviously a strong data acumen, but a very strong product sense as well. So I hope these examples made it clear on what product sense means. I'll recap it a little bit. It basically means having the ability to be consistent with how good your solutions are, or to be able to deliver the intended solutions time on time again, right? A few examples, as we discussed: iPhone, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok. And now we are going to dive deeper into one of the tenets of how you want to build product sense, and that is building empathy, right? So there are few ways in which you can do it. The first one is observing how people interact with products, right? So um, repeatedly observe people using products, even if they're yours or someone else. What I find a lacking thing, or I find something that is not done enough in the ecosystem, is talking or surveying people, or measuring their reactions, measuring their facial expressions, measuring where they are, where they want to tap next, measuring hints of nervousness, hints of confusion, hints of happiness, hints of delight when you look at people using your product. So it's extremely important, if you want to build empathy, is to observe people with the product that you are targeting empathy for. Small details like, okay, if I give you a product, what is the first reaction? What are the kind of questions you are thinking? What are your facial expressions? Do you look confused? Do you look like you're doing something wrong? Do you look confident? Do you look excited? Right? And of course, following it up with open-ended question that help you understand how they feel better. Right? If you keep doing this again and again, if you keep practicing interacting, looking at people interacting with products, the better you get. I've added a few questions that help you interact with products better. Uh, the Obviously there are three here. One of the first one is, how would you describe the purpose of this product? It's very important. We'll come to this part later in the whole presentation as well, because it's critical to know what people feel when they look at your product. Many a times, and I've faced that at in my journey as well, people don't realize what is the purpose of the product. People don't realize who this product is for. Is it for me? Is it for, do can I use it? Is something that people don't realize. So asking them, how would you describe the purpose of this product, will give you a very clear indication of that. It will also give you a clear indication of the kind of communication you can use to describe. This is very important for PMs. It's usually skipped and usually left to growth or marketing or product marketing, but the person delivering the feature can communicate what needs to be said about the feature or the product, the maybe not the best, but as close as the best, because the best is the person who's actually using it. So the best person to describe the purpose of the product is the person who's actually going to use it. And if they are not able to describe it, then there is a problem, because you have not communicated, or the product has not communicated its effectiveness on the landing page or home screen. So when you ask such questions, you'll be able to gauge the effectiveness of your home screen. In addition, obviously, as I said, we'll give you the right words to use. Things that people say are things that other people would relate to. So that means that you should use that, and that really will help you describe what the product is for, and be confident that people have understood the purpose of your product. And the second and another very important question that you could ask is, once you're in onto a screen, once you're onto a flow, or once you're into a funnel, what is the next step? What is the next thing that you want to do now? So one very key insight, or one very key application that I've figured out, or that we've looked at and figured out, is how micro funnels add to the overall numbers, right? So when you are in a micro funnel, it feels like a very small universe of doing two or three screens, right, or doing two or three flows, right? But that all adds up to the overall retention of the product, or the overall utility of the product, right? So once you're in the product, what kind of actions do you want to take? So this basically identifies what is an easy thing to do for users, for discovery, and for usage as well. So for example, if your product is to take a photo, right, then how likely is someone to tell you that, hey, my next action should be to take a photo? uh, those kind of questions, it will help you identify if the intended feature is easy to discover, and obviously then you can work on making the navigation better and making the call to action better, right? The third is a meta question, which basically helps you understand what people feel, or what are they thinking. So a very important rule of thumb to note is, people don't really notice or think about their feelings while using products. People don't really do self talk. They don't talk to themselves, or they don't tell themselves what they're feeling. So hence you should ask them at every step of, how do you feel about this? What is your feeling on the screen? Do you feel nice about the screen? What do you want to do next? So people really don't know what they feel until they're asked explicitly. So ask that question always. What are you thinking? What does that screen make you feel? What does that button make you feel? Right? And this sort of makes CTAs so important in the entire flow journey of any product, because it helps users understand what they should be thinking, or it helps users understand what actions they must be taking. So to recap, the first rule of thumb towards building empathy is to observe people interacting with products. Once you observe people interacting with products, things like when they are nervous, when they're happy, excited, you build a sense of how your product is being perceived. You spot moments of confusion, you eliminate them. You spot moment of delight, you repeat them. You interview users based on questions that are open ended, that would help you uh, gauge what the other person thinks about the product. Things like asking him, what's the purpose of this? What kind of actions do you want to take? Or how do you feel right now? And once you do this, you get great insight. So one example that I wanted to quote here is, early on, we had noticed that the mobile app had very low activation rates. So by activation at that time, we meant there was a uh, core set of events that we wanted users to do, and that was quite low. So to fix that, what we did was we conducted user research sessions, and we understood why. And as a result of our questions, what we found was, people did not understand the core value of the application. And because there was competing communication in ads on the home screen, there was multiple CTAs or multiple points of entry, people would end up installing the application and just not knowing what to do next, right? So this is a classic problem, because uh, activation is not very well defined. That was problem one. Obviously, the problem two, or a bigger problem, was, if you present competing communications to users, you tend to make them you tend to repulse them, or you tend to make them go away. So understanding users, understanding how people are perceiving the core value of your application, understanding that you cannot have communication that says two things or asks people to do one of two things, is what is really, really important. When we applied these, we changed our advertisements to say, and our landing page to say just one thing. And that one thing is the fact that you have to make your first invoice. And we immediately saw crazy jumps in activation rates and the weekly retention rates, because now people were starting to understand what the application meant. So whoever was a fit for the use case of the application would now go through and do those desired activation events that we wanted them to do. So it's very important to ask the right questions. It's very important to take insights from them, act on them, and it's even more critical to actually measure whatever you're doing. So a lot of times product sense comes across as something is not measurable, but that's just untrue for anything. Anything in product management has to be measurable. So to repeat this, the kind of questions you should ask are ones that help you understand how people think your product can work for them. What is the job that your product is supposed to do? What are the actions that people want to take on different flows, different places? How do they think? How do they feel about certain screen? And from there, you derive insights into actions, and then those actions lead to great changes. So, five key tenets towards developing empathy. Always assume that people are in a hurry when they're using your product. Always assume a persona that's using your product while there is something else going on in his life or in his mind. A key mistake that we do is while building the product, designers, product managers, analysts are so deeply into the ecosystem that they are only and only thinking about the product at that time, which is not true at all for someone who's using your product. Your product, when the person is attempting to use it, he might have a television running in the background, he might have music plugged in into his ears, he might be traveling, he might be in a meeting, he might be actually working and someone comes and disturbs him. So they're always time crunched and always distracted is something that you should assume whenever you're trying to create a product. Right, that is why things like having details in labels, having details in verbose texts doesn't really make sense, because a lot of people will just not have the time to read it. Right, they you assume, no, this is written, it's just 1 second, but no, they don't have that 1 second also to figure out what to do next or to read the fine print. You have to make it extremely clear for them on, hey, this is what is to be done next. Right, you have to ensure, like I said, the primary actions or the primary call to actions are very, very obvious. Right, your defaults must be right. You must have researched the default in the sense of what is the bolder button, what is the visually first big block of button that people see. You need to be very, very clear about that. Otherwise, if you leave it to the fine prints, you just narrow down your funnel towards people, only people who are adept at using your product. If if uh, if you want to create a product that's more widespread, you need to assume that they are always time crunched and they're always distracted. They're not focusing on fine prints, they're just focusing on the major things that are shown on the screen. And as a rule of thumb, there could just be two, at max two things that you can communicate on the screen. That is also not ideal. The ideal situation is to start with, what's the one thing I can communicate for my product at a particular moment of time. And that really, really helps you develop empathy, because that is what the user is feeling. That is the distance between you and the user. You are developing the product, you are deeply engrossed into it. The user is not. The user is spending half a second, 1 second of active dedicated time to look at your product. So always assume that they are time crunched. Always assume that they will not read, they will not even view a video, to be honest. They just have microseconds to make a decision on what to do next. And you have to make your visual design and your primary CTAs so appealing that they take that action in those microseconds. Right, the next and very, very important is and what I have seen people struggle understanding or grasping is, why would people abandon a flow? Right, a lot of times even basic flows like just entering your phone number and moving on would see a 10-15% drop off. Right, which is very, very obvious for someone who's made the decision to install an application. Why would that person not enter a phone number and just drop off? The reason is confusion or nervousness. Any part of your product, if that makes people confused or nervous, they abandon it, right? In the example I took, what happens is a small percentage of people get confused or get nervous about sharing phone number, and they just drop off. Similarly, if you have a screen, or if you have a product flow, or if you have a product in general that tries to communicate a lot of things, that tries to do, okay, you can do this, you can do that, that confuses people on, okay, what should I do first? And then they just drop off. So never, you must always avoid confusion or creating confusion. Never let the user get stuck in a state where he doesn't know what to do next, or he has more than one option to do next. If he has just one main option, that's your goal. If you confuse the person, or if you make him nervous about his action, if you make him if you don't communicate aggressively on what you want them to do, uh, you make them nervous, and that is when people are really fearful of doing something wrong, and that is when they'll just drop, kill the app, and go away, or think that, okay, I'll figure it out later, right? So things like contrasting options, telling users, hey, without my product you will be this, with my product you will be this. That's a very good way of showing users, of building trust. You make very clear cut lines that very clearly define what this is supposed to do. The labels that you use are very clear, they're unambiguous, as written here. But always use these kind of tools to make sure that people are feeling confident about what should they do, or people know what the product expects them to do next to achieve its goal, right? The third is TMI, too much information. Very often an understanding is, my product does so many things, why can't the more I tell people, the more they'll be convinced to use me. No. uh, at Vyapar, we ran experiments. Our first versions used to have multiple entry points, dedicated communication about multiple things that the product can do. We ran experiments. We eliminated every CTA and just started showing one element. And almost every micro funnel increased. Wherever we had a micro funnel, we always had to just focus on showing one element, and it almost always increased. Right? When people feel overwhelmed, they leave. That is being empathetic to the user. You might experience it yourself but not notice it. When you feel overwhelmed uh, at what show to watch on Netflix, you probably switch and go somewhere else and watch something on some other platform, or do something else. When you feel overwhelmed about too much work, you actually end up starting nothing, because there is so much to do, right? Similarly, if you tell people, I can manage this, you can do this, you can call people, you can schedule reminders, you can do so many things on my product, on you just overwhelm them. Tell them that one thing that they need to do, uh, and then tell it well. And that is a very key goal of developing empathy. If you tell people a lot of information, you just risk them dropping off, because it's again percentages. Some people might find it easy, some people might find it understandable, even if there are more things, because their processing speed is faster. But most people don't. So if you overwhelm people with a lot of information, people tend to leave your application, right? The fourth object, or the fourth rule of thumb, is that decisions are actually influenced by context. In that particular moment, in those 3 or 4 seconds, whether that decision of, this is useful to me or not, is what people is what matters to people. So at key positions like purchasing your product, or at key positions like starting or activating towards your product, use things like comparisons. Like I said, this is, if without this you will be here, with this you will be there. uh, the superpower that purchasing your subscription gives users, or the social proof telling about, hey, so many people are loving the product, or so many people are saying good things about the product. In that particular context, it influences the decision. So no decision is absolute, no decision is made up for a product in advance. Decisions are made in context. At that, but I can plan watching a movie months in advance, and then the movie comes out and I see really really bad reviews of it, my decision is let's not watch it, because the context of my of watching that movie has changed because of social proofing. People have told me this is really bad, don't go, even though I was really really waiting for it. So decisions are always influenced by context, every decision that we take, and similarly every decision that our users take. And finally, make sure that everywhere, from the Play Store listing to the landing page, or the App Store listing to the landing page to the home screen, the goal of your product is always very clearly communicated to the user, right? Always remember the job to be done framework, where people use your product, or people use any product to complete a job for them, right? Always very very clearly communicate what job is being done because of using your product, right? A lot of times you feel it's obvious, but users are actually unaware of what your product can do, what is your product actually communicating to them. So the best way to do it is running experiments with your onboarding, with your purchasing flow, or all those things that really clearly tells that this is why my product is useful, this is the job that it does, this is my product's goal. And among those experiments you would figure out one that actually increases retention. So very very key point here is to explain what job or what goal your product meets, right? So I'll just recap the five uh, points or rule of thumb towards developing empathy. Assuming people are always time crunched and distracted, never letting them get confused or nervous, not letting them get overwhelmed, uh, always keeping in mind that decisions are not made beforehand, they are made in the context of the product. And finally, make sure that your product's goal is very well communicated, right? So this was all about the first way of developing empathy, which is observing people interacting with your products, asking them the right questions, and getting insights from there, and obviously a few pointers on how you can look at users when you're developing empathy, right? The second way to do it is deconstructing everyday products, right? So empathy can also be developed by observing how you yourself use everyday products. And by products, I don't mean just mobile applications or websites. The products could be anything, could be a water bottle, or a table, or a chair, or a TV remote. Everything is a product, right? So you can develop that by observing how you use everyday products, right? So again, a very very good way to do it is comparing and contrasting similar category products, right? For example, if you are looking at cameras, then you contrast uh, and then compare cameras from two different brands, right? What kind of features is one set, but how they look, the functionality they do, what is the difference in their communication, uh, and that will help you understand the product more deeply. In a more software domain sense, if you are, for example, comparing two products that help teams communicate, like Microsoft Teams and Slack, you try to understand, okay, what's Slack's communication? This feels more zingy, more hip, versus Teams is more professional. What does their user interface try to tell you, or what is the compare and contrast on their user interface? So it's easier to understand how a product thinks about itself when you compare it to similar products in the space, right? So I recommend, this is a very very good practice. Everyday products, not just software products, the everyday products that you use, even for example the plates you use, how is plate from company A different from plate from company B? What is the different branding that they say? Do they say different things, or is it very similar? The more you think about this, the more you would understand what is commoditization of products and what is not. How do some products make themselves stand out, and why others are bunched together in a commoditized space? So always remember, deconstruct everyday products. Uh, if you're on LinkedIn, or if you're anywhere studying product management, you would have tear downs, or you would have use cases or case studies built to deconstruct products that basically help you understand how people are thinking about the product, right? When you yourself use new products, write down or observe your self talk and feelings, include when you feel frustrated, include when you feel delighted. One I think I do a lot is on my note taking application, I write down tear downs, or I write down what do I feel good and bad about products. And for example, Google Photos, um, after a certain point of usage, in my understanding is probably maybe 1000 or so photos, they start suggesting you collages or videos of memories with either people, or of a particular date, or in general of a particular group, which is a delight, which I noted down as something that delights me. Because okay, maybe the memory or the video that is made is not the greatest, it's not the most uh, well refined, well transitioned, the best music and all of that, but it's delight because the product has thought enough for me. The product has thought that okay, uh, this person is using our product so regularly, let's let's try and make him feel better by creating a nice collage or a nice movie from the photos he's given us. Or let's create something between two people on Valentine's Day on what we feel is this person's partner, right? Or so that's the sort of delight that Google Photos delivers. And you need to observe that when you are deconstructing a product. You need to observe how you talk to yourself. What do you feel? What are moments of frustration? What are moments of delight? And try to replicate that later when you are building products on your own. Once you do this, you will gain more insight towards people's motivations, and of course your own motivation towards using the product. So that will then of course help you build better products in the same domain. So always spend a good amount of time every week or every month deconstructing everyday products. Note down the entire deconstruction, the entire tear down. Understand what you feel. Self talk. Talk about your feelings, talk about your frustration, talk about your delights. Compare products in similar spaces, Slack versus Teams, uh, google Google search versus Bing search, any two competing products, and you will understand the difference in the communication. How one company's logo is a lot more colorful, one company's logo is lesser, um, is lesser colorful, more professional. What fonts they use, what communication they make, what's their logo, all of those things. So it's easier to understand the product strategy when you compare it with other products in the space. As I said, there are so many examples that or so many places you can go to develop this. There are so many courses that run, so many codes that run IPL itself. Or you can connect with fellow new PMs, aspiring PMs, to run these tear downs or run these deconstructions, right? The deconstruction should not be limited to other people. Obviously, you should see what other people are doing. We've talked about it earlier, but it should also be you yourself talking to yourself and understanding what your motivation is towards using a product. Right. This is another slide that I came across on a blog, which is basically what happens when you develop empathy. Right. When you develop empathy, you are able to uncover and solve non-obvious needs. Right. Let's this is an example for Instagram. Uh, if you look at the needs that are on the surface, that is exploring, discovering content from people, showing your best photos or your best life, sharing some moments that you want to highlight in your life, and talking to people or connecting with friends, right? And when if this is your universe, you would create and explore, you would create some filters on camera, you would create uh, posts, reels, videos, whatever, for moments. You would create messenger, right? And that is where you will stop. But great PMs with a stronger product sense, you can actually go deeper and look below the iceberg as well, and understand what more people want, because you are empathetic to them. These are less obvious needs, but this is what separates a great product from a normal one. The less obvious needs are, hey, I don't want to only share the best highlight moment. I want to share whatever is going on every day, right? Which is stories. Hey, I want to know if my data is being shared or my data is being leaked, which is privacy in settings. right? I want to be included, which means hashtags that make people feel included, right? I want to protect my mental health. Okay, hide your likes. I want to feel safe. Then you can uh, what Instagram does is it shows a warning, or it feels it blocks out content which it realizes could be bullying. uh, I want to know if the information or the content I'm seeing is actually authentic. And that's where they do fact checking by verified ticks and all of that. So, what differentiates a normal product that would have solved highlight content, showing my best self and connecting with friends, is showing or is solving for these less obvious needs, right? For example, i I don't want to share the only highlights. I want to actually share my daily life, and I want to have a way by which I can create stories, which is one of the most used features on Instagram right now. Verified ticks, hashtags that are more inclusive, hiding likes, because that'll help me not obsess over what my post is doing and all of that. These are less obvious needs but are as important, right? With a stronger product sense, when you're empathetic to the user, when you realize or when you look at them and when you speak to them and understand that, okay, what if I want to share the photo of somewhere I'm sitting and reading a book? That can't be a post. uh, it has to be something, and you build a feature for that. So this was a very interesting side that I came across in the middle. We'll move on to the next part of our discussion, which is improving creativity. So before this, we looked at building empathy. Building empathy is very similar to building to understanding users, to understanding how they behave, what they feel, what they think your product is supposed to do. And what we discussed was some key tenets by which you could uh, build empathy or build that empathetic muscle uh, in yourself. What we are going to discuss now is how you can improve creativity, right? So the first way to improve creativity is obviously to learn from the best, right? So spending time with people who are already creative helps a lot in developing creativity. Now, creativity is harder to develop. Empathy is still easier to develop. Creativity is slightly harder to develop. That is why spending a lot of time with people who already have creativity is one of the best ways to develop it, right? If you've sort of never worked at a company with strong product thinkers, what I would recommend is join a company or join a place where you feel there is a strong culture of product fundamentals, right? So think about the companies whose products you use and enjoy, or whose products you feel solve a interesting or a big problem, and that helps you hone your product's fundamentals, right? Once you are in the company of great product thinkers, you should attend how they review products. You should look for patterns and questions and feedbacks from their reviews and learn from it, right? What type of comments are the most common? What are the most two or three common things that great product thinkers look at when they look at a product? And after some time, you will figure out a mental checklist that they follow to ensure that new product ideas succeed, right? So it's very important you follow good thinkers on social media, on LinkedIn. You follow good essays and everything, and that will really help you build a strong product sense. So again, repeating it, one of the most important ways of building creativity is to spend more time with creative people, to strong product thinkers uh, who have strong product fundamentals, who are good with frameworks or good with empathy, who build a lot of great solutions, is the right place to be. So after a point, you would figure out a list of points that they want to do before they roll out a new product idea, right? Next is very interesting. Just 1 minute. Sorry for that disturbance, but yeah, moving on. The next is very important. It's understanding problems, right? It's so common for product managers to jump into finding a solution before they've actually even understood the problem, right? So it's very critical that they understand the problem. What happens is A lot of times you already have a solution, and what you're trying to do is just force fit a problem into them. So it's very critical. So many PMs are guilty of this. They jump into finding a solution before they truly understand the problem, right? And then what happens is the team struggles to eliminate solutions, and they just bring in ineffective solutions, right? And one major problem is you've not understood the problem well yourself, right? So if you frame the problem clearly, you understand why the problem exists, it can help you with better decision making, right? So product thinkers or good product sense people are people who can reframe the problems very, very well, who can reframe problems and distill it into just what people need. For example, if your problem is, and if your problem statement is my elevator is too slow, the solution that you would find is to make it faster. You would probably go to another brand, you would upgrade the motor, you would change the algorithm, I don't know, you will do a lot of stuff which is high ticket. But if you are empathetic or if you are creative, you can reframe the problem and understand that, okay, the elevator being slow is not a problem because it's only costing me a few seconds or a few minutes or a minute. The problem is that the wait for the elevator is annoying. If that's your problem, your solution can be how to make the wait feel shorter, which is putting up mirrors or playing some music or putting a hand sanitizer or running a screen in which there's some nice tidbits information running, right? Similarly, if the problem statement is that cutting grass in my garden takes too long, you would build a really modern lawn mower which would cut the grass very quickly. But if your problem is it's messy to maintain the grass, big, long grass, your solution could be a fertilizer which prevents grass from growing beyond a certain level. And that's a much interesting solution because then you don't need to run the mower and spend time on it. So it's absolutely critical to break out or to break down the problem as much as you can. Several problems have significantly better solutions just by making the problems just by reframing the problems into a better one. So once again, I'll take the examples. If you say the elevator is too slow or the car is too slow, you would fix the motor maybe or some big ticket item. But if you reframe it and say the wait for the elevator is really annoying, then you would make it shorter by putting up mirrors and playing music and then sanitizers and all that. Similarly, the lawnmower example, there's so many examples where you can just reframe the problem statement and that'll fix something. If you're sitting in a room and you say it's very windy and I'm feeling cold, uh, the solution would be applying a heater or something. But if your problem statement is the window lets too much air in, then you would replace the window. So very different situations and very different solutions, very different broad level solutions. One of them will solve exactly what's needed to solve. One of them might work. I mean, a faster elevator might solve it, but it'll cost you much more. Where you could have solved that problem by just putting a mirror, right? Once again, you have to ask the right questions to people who you meet or people who you look at or look up to as great product thinkers. Ask them questions like, why did you build this product? This will help you to understand the kind of user insights that they seek. Ask them what were the key decision points that they took. uh, what were the alternative approaches, what were the breadth of solutions that were available before they took, how did they test the hypotheses, what kind of trade-offs they made. Basically the entire product management loop or the entire circles approach, or whatever you want to call it. Go through that with them and understand how they approach it. What was a surprising insight, what was, and how did they go about uncovering that insight. When what was a moment when your initial hypothesis was severely wrong and you had to course correct, or how do you navigate ambiguity using principles or framework? What kind of frameworks do you use? Do you prioritize using rice? Do you use circles? What do you use as a framework to internalize product principles? What is your tech stack to internalize product principles? So it's very, very important to ask the right questions when you meet great product thinkers, to understand the problems well, and obviously to finally follow technology and domain changes with a lot of curiosity. So very, very important is to follow whatever is happening in the domain very well. You can spend time learning about trends that are emerging. You can spend time about looking at looking at keynote events from Apple, Meta, Google, understanding what kind of society or what kind of societal changes or what kind of technology changes they are betting upon. So PMs really need to understand what's possible in their domains to come up with really creative solutions, right? And breaking this down further, there are two levels in which you have to imagine trends. One is a macro level and a micro level. A macro level is major platform shifts, for example, Web3 happening, augmented reality happening, AI. And then there is social shift that is happening, which is basically people are working remotely, right? Or people are meeting remotely. Then there is regulatory changes, which happens a lot in especially developing countries because more and more understanding and regulations are coming in, right? So what happens is in the beginning, most people are skeptical about all new technology, and they might point out flaws and they might say, okay, this is not going to work and all of that. But as a PM, your mind should be open, right? Because at a time, people were like skeptical of, hey, e-commerce will not work. No one would put their cards online because it's so unsafe. And then it just boomed. So instead of dismissing a trend or a technology as a fad, ask yourself, hey, if this were to become the best, or if this were to reach the potential that people are talking about, what are opportunities that my product can take from this, right? Similarly, macro trends, sorry, are helpful in seeing as a whole industry, where is it going. A lot of non-obvious opportunities come in, and and that really helps you understand the entire sort of uh, scheme of things, right? The next is micro changes. So micro changes are some technology changes, little changes that have happened. What I would recommend here is you meet with engineers, meet with experts in the domain, and discuss them about, hey, what's going on new, is the platform doing something new, what are you coding in, okay, why is this language better, why is Flutter better, what's going on there, are there any new APIs that are out, or new ways in which you can link with APIs. So those are kind of things that will help you understand technology and domain changes at a micro level. So at a macro level, you can examine trends, platform shifts, societal shifts, regulatory changes, and at a micro level, you can understand deeper technology changes or improvements in existing technology. That is very important because only when you know what's going on in the market or what's going on in the industry or the world as a whole can you use your solutions to get tuned to that. So don't dismiss them as a fad. Let other people do it, but you yourself should think, okay, if this rises to its full potential, what kind of opportunities can I make out of it, right? And finally, how do you know if you're getting better at product sense? If you follow tenets of empathy and creativity, you would definitely start getting better at product sense. It takes time and practice, so you might not happen immediately, but it will happen over a period of time. You will start noticing small things about products and people that you might have missed earlier on. When you are reviewing product experiences or presenting, you start to anticipate non-obvious user problems which other people are not anticipating. Even in some ambiguity, you are able to develop really high quality hypotheses that actually end up being true or that actually end up making a great product experience. Your understanding of the users and the landscape is going to enable you to contribute more unique insights to your team. So you're again and again contributing more unique insights, and your changes have started impacting matrices, and more often than not they were not doing that earlier. And then finally your designers or your design partners have started complimenting you on the details that you have noticed in the design and the product. So to summarize, if you're getting better at product sense, you will start noticing subtle things about products that you might have missed earlier, micro frustrations and delight. You might start receiving uh, non-obvious user problems become apparent to you while you're presenting. Even when it's ambiguous, you can develop deep hypothesis, and your understanding of users gives you more unique insights. And finally, uh, you know that your impact is directly translating into matrices. And then you obviously get good comments from your design partners about details that you notice. So those are things by which you can know if you're getting better at product sense. Which brings me to the end of this presentation. And obviously, it's a very important thing and a very easy, no, not sorry, a very important thing and a very easy path to follow. Obviously, you have to keep practicing on that path, and that is the tough part. But you need to keep dissecting the product sense loop again and again until you get better at it. So with that, I'll wrap up my presentation. I hope this was helpful to you. So all the best to everyone who's attended it, who's viewed it, and thanks a lot.
Thank you for delivering a brilliant session, Malay. Really great and thought-provoking insights. So, audience, please go ahead and ask the questions in the Q&A window or the comment section on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think Neetu's just asked your favorite product thinkers. So I think Naval Ravikant, of course, is someone I follow. Julie Zhou at the product design VP at Facebook. There is Josh Fletcher, who I follow very keenly. Alex Davis, who managed Mozilla's product. I think those are like a few names that I follow and they understand what they are doing. So those are a couple of few people that I follow. Anuj has asked, what advice would you provide for people just starting? So I think just if you're try starting to apply frameworks, try starting with the basics of product sense. Building empathy is one of the first things that you should do if you're trying to break into product management, because that'll really help you. And Yogeda says, thank you for a wonderful session. So yeah, I hope it was useful. And thank you so much for having me again.
So we have really enjoyed you having with us, Malay. It has been a complete pleasure. Please accept the certificate of appreciation from the Institute. The QR code on the certificate will take you to the dedicated Hall of Fame created for you with the recording of the session. Please share it with your network. We'll be sharing the webinar recording on our YouTube channel as well. And audience, thank you for joining. And don't forget to register for the upcoming webinars. Check the link in the chat window to sign up for all the upcoming webinars. And do share your feedback for the session.